Listen to Alfred.
I'm at Shaftesbury's household recycling centre at Wincombe. Some locals visit regularly to hunt for bargains. I've also heard how Dorset's waste differs from other areas and that our recycling is sent to another nation for processing.
I'm probably a self-confessed waste geek.
That's Ian Manley. He's in charge. He's the contract team leader for Dorset Council.
Yeah, there is a lot to it, and there's a lot more than meets the eye. There's a lot more involved in it than simply your bin just being collected every week or you just dropping it into a skip at your local recycling centre.
He put on an orange high-visibility jacket to lead me around the rather small and very busy facility on the Wincombe Business Park. The site's name, the Household Recycling Centre, is important. One of Ian's colleagues, Jamie, stressed the distinction between this and an old-fashioned tip. They're trying to repurpose what people throw out. The facility's open from 10 till 4, 7 days, and locals use it.
Last year we've got a traffic counter that is just a little induction loop that runs across the entrance to the site. 140,000 visitors per annum come through the gate. So it's a large amount of numbers, and around about 5,000 tonnes of material processed or delivered in every year.
It's quite a lot, isn't it?
It is. And for the scale of the site, it's really busy, quick turnaround, and lots of traffic to handle throughout the year.
As we spoke, residents were driving in and emptying the contents of their car boots, carrying unwanted items up the steps to then drop the waste down to one of the green containers lining one side of the site. Each skip was labelled with the type of material it was intended for. Across the yard, Ian's colleagues were preparing to swing the site's metal doorway shut. Seconds later, what looked like an orange, squat mechanical digger swung across the forecourt. Public access had been suspended so the crew could use the compactor safely.
Without compaction, you probably wouldn't get as much in a bin, that's quite obvious, and probably up to about 2/3 more material going into any single container with compaction. So an essential part of keeping the site running and keeping it open to people as much as possible.
So it's just the equivalent of you at home standing on your waste paper basket,
absolutely.
trying to get more stuff in.
Yeah, absolutely, making sure you can get as much in there as possible. So I think that was quite a swift compaction. So I guess there was one bin that needed compacting, and they've now reopened the site and people are going to start coming back in.
I had assumed that Ian's team's workload would be huge before and after the Christmas break, but it seems July and August are their peak periods.
High summer when people are in their gardens. The single most greatest waste that we have through this site is garden waste, green waste, and that really peaks in summertime.
Waste and recycling has evolved in recent decades. Sometimes global factors like increasing prices for materials can influence processes. When we spoke, Ian was waiting to see whether policies previously advocated by Michael Gove would carry over or be expanded with the new government. Our town's waste facility has changed too in recent years. It's moved for a start.
This operation was located at the Longmead depot, and there were 5 containers there. And hardly any separation of waste. So within the space of about 10 to 15 years, separation has been essential in the waste industry, mainly driven by things like landfill tax. So it makes it more kind of environmentally beneficial and economically beneficial to separate the waste out. So we probably separate maybe 30 to 40 different types of waste on any of these sites, right the way through from energy-saving light bulbs up to the main bulk of material, which are things like garden waste and wood waste.
Well, looking at the journey of some of the things that people will drop off, you've got a big red bin there marked all printer cartridges. So if you come along and you've got your printer cartridge and you put it in there, what happens to it?
So the printer cartridges is a relatively new thing that's coming onto the site, and it's come off of the back of a Dorset family who for many years collected printer cartridges from around Dorset. They made the decision that it wasn't for them to be doing that anymore, and we've worked with them to be able to introduce that at the recycling centres. Those printer cartridges sometimes go back to manufacturers, some of them break down those cartridges. There's metal components within them, also valuable plastics that can be used. So a variety of locations. It's likely that something like that would need further sorting beyond this site.
I was curious about what happens to the recycling which locals put in bins outside their Shaftesbury homes for collection. It travels a long way.
Your green lidded bin, those materials are being bulked up locally, or particularly in this area, is delivered down to Blandford where it's bulked up. It's then taken actually to North Wales to be sorted, and most of it is then gone on to be recycled within the UK. The main reason that it's going to North Wales is because Dorset has a lot of newsprint still in its recycling mix, a lot more than other areas in the country. There's still a lot of newspaper readers in Dorset compared to other areas, and that newsprint probably makes up about a third of everybody's recycling bin. And in North Wales, the facility that sorts it puts that straight into a newsprint paper mill. And then it comes back probably within the space of a couple of weeks into quality newsprint back within the UK. So yeah, it seems strange to be taking it to North Wales, but it's actually quite a good news story in terms of supporting domestic industry and domestic printers.
Do you know which newspaper is the one that fills more space?
I have no idea. The broadsheets you would probably say would take up more room, but I can't say specifically. But it's generally the kind of the larger broadsheet newspapers that the company that we send them to are interested in because of the quality of the fibres and that kind of thing, their recyclability. The reason that we get the kind of almost the deal that we do is because we've got a larger proportion of newsprint in Dorset compared to other areas, because of the demographic. Perhaps we've got larger amounts of cardboard. We're seeing cardboard grow with things like the kind of online economies, lots of things being dispatched and posted and all those kind of things, but we still retain a large amount of newsprint.
We're all aware of campaigns to encourage us to reduce the single-use plastic containers in our shopping. Plastic Free Shaftesbury is leading the campaign for our town to achieve plastic-free status. Ian hasn't noticed a significant drop in disposed of single-use plastic materials as yet.
They make up a relatively small fraction by weight of our material. We've noticed things in the past, things with things like glass, where glass has been lightweighted. We definitely see people being more conscientious about the types of plastic that they use, but that hasn't necessarily correlated directly at this point in time. And I welcome the focus on that, and actually reusable containers, all of those kind of things are kind of much better for the environment. And I would encourage people to look at that where possible, refill, all of those kinds of things to not have these kind of single-use plastics.
Shaftesbury's population has increased from 7,300 people in 2011 to an estimated 9,200 residents this year. That means more waste could be heading for the Wincombe site. But in recent years, online trading of second-hand goods on Facebook Marketplace or eBay has become more popular. I asked Ian whether selling unwanted items, which would previously have been thrown away, reduces the burden on the facility.
The site, you could probably argue, has probably outgrown itself in terms of the local population, not only here in Shaftesbury, but further afield in Gillingham and surrounding areas. In terms of the eBay thing, I mean, that's great, that's reuse. Reuse doesn't necessarily have to happen here. People doing it themselves in their own homes, fantastic. And just the whole mindset about how people approach wastes and commodities, seeing them more as resources rather than something that they just chuck in the bin is fantastic.
If staff at the centre find good quality items like furniture or books, they're put up for sale in the reuse zone. There's a chance to bag a bargain with a maximum charge of £10 per item. When I visited, a copper salmon mould and a gilt-framed picture of what looked like Melbury Hill was on offer.
Within the last 12 to 18 months, we've invested in small shelters just as this one to be able to keep those materials dry, so they will last much longer. Previously this was a non-covered area. Materials would get wet and then we would have to dispose of them. Being able to keep them dry is much better. They'll last a lot longer, but yeah, very popular. Lots of people coming in to see what's here, what's available, and something we always promote. The arrangement at the moment is that the materials that arrive on site become the property of the contractor. They retain the funds from that, and as a result, that links on to the operational cost that the council incurs for running the facility. There will be materials that they move to one side and move elsewhere for other sale, but the vast majority of stuff that comes onto site is made available for people to observe and decide whether or not they want to buy it, and usually for very low prices.
Ian's colleague Jamie says around 50% of reuse centre visitors are regulars. He enjoys the rapport with them and considers them customers as if this were a shop. Older residents are particularly keen on rummaging. Jamie explained that two women used to go to the Wareham facility each lunchtime and take a flask for a cuppa, but here in Shaftesbury, a sign at the centre advises of 10 minutes maximum viewing time.
You can potentially kind of create the wrong kind of atmosphere if you've got lots of people hanging around just purely to look at reuse and also approaching people out of the back of their cars. And because the site's limited in space, an additional car in here sat here for 20-30 minutes, which could be used for someone bringing in their other material. It's just trying to have a sensible approach to how long people can reasonably spend on site.
Occasionally customers deliver items which create a problem for the team.
I think the biggest headache is the occasional munitions and explosives that potentially get dropped off.
Does that happen often?
More often than you think, maybe one a year. But normally, if that happens, the site's closed and kind of bomb disposal people are called in. And I think the closest one is actually based in Portsmouth. So it can take a while, but we've had things like flares, mines, shells, other ordnance that occur that people probably feel that are kind of not a risk, but actually when an operative here finds something like that, you have to treat it as worst case, and that means closing the site and getting someone in to look at it properly. So that's probably the biggest headache, but that doesn't happen very often.
It must be quite difficult communicating safe practice to people who think it's okay to bung a mine in the back of the car and sort of drive through Shaftesbury to come here.
I think it's very difficult to have that kind of specific communication about those kind of items. To them, it's seemingly harmless. What I would say is, if you've got anything like that, get it checked out, because when it comes here, the guys working here will always assume worst case, because they have to.
We were chatting less than 1 mile away from the Wiltshire border. Dorset ratepayers fund this facility, but even so, domestic customers aren't asked to show their address. Ian says cross-border activity works two ways, and it all balances out.
We do get people coming in from Wiltshire. We don't currently have a Dorset council policy on cross borders. Other surrounding councils do have policies on whether they want residents in from other council areas. We currently don't have that. I've always been of the mindset that it's managing waste in the right place, and if those people are proximate to somewhere like this, it's kind of okay for them to use it. There are other people that would say, well, they're not paying Dorset rates, they're not providing this site, but we know that we have residents in Sherborne, Bedminster, that go into Crewkerne in Somerset, and equally in Devon as well. So there's a kind of a bit of a give and take approach to kind of cross-border in some areas.
So if you're travelling to the site from Semley, the Donheads or East Noyle, you're not going to face a challenge. I asked Ian how he predicts this facility could change by 2030. He'd like the public isolated from operations so there wouldn't be the need to suspend access during compacting.
I would hope that we'd have a greater amount of separation. If there are things that we can do in future where money exists not to get people to go up steps to put waste in containers, we will certainly look to do that. And examples of some of our modern sites where people can just drive almost to effectively the height of the container and just unload over a small wall is much better for a whole variety of users.
And for the immediate future, next time you visit the facility at Wincombe, Ian would appreciate it if you were prepared.
Sort your material before you come, because that makes it much easier for you to be able to identify which container you need to put that material into. You can turn around quickly, and particularly with a site like this in Shaftesbury, where space is at a premium, people can come in, take their materials off and get out quickly.
Listen to Alfred.